Okay, I think we're live. So let's see here. Let's see if anybody pops on, and then we'll go from there. How do I make this? Let's see. Okay, so I think I have this set up correctly. Cool. Okay, so I think we're on, but I want to see who's. I see there's people watching, but I can't see like who it is, so I'm kind of curious. Can you guys maybe drop a comment so I can see some names? Otherwise, I don't really know. Hey, what's up? I owe you a text message. Hey, Christy. Okay, good. I'm glad you guys can hear me. Doran, totally. I'll get back to you very soon. I wonder why I can't see who's in here. Well, anyways, that means hi, Katie. That means that you guys will just have to communicate with me so I can see who's in here. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself. So, okay, great. I am so excited to be in here. I like to be prompt, so we're gonna go ahead and just start. If you are watching it right now, you guys already commented, but I like to say, are you team live or team replay? If you are team replay, just let me know so that way I can start to better schedule the trainings going forward so I can kind of see when people are watching. And hey, it says Greg and there's a woman. Is that your name? That's awesome. Oh, yes, Christy, this will be recorded and it will be in the group. You can watch it at any time. But I'm really glad you're able to hop on right now. And going to the park with the kids is an awesome thing to do. So, highly encourage that. So, let's see here. Okay, we'll just go for it. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Natalie. I'm an integrative dietitian and nutrition coach, and I focus on helping women who have autoimmune diseases or who feel like they're progressing into an autoimmune state to find lasting relief using food and lifestyle as medicine. So that's what I do. It's really based off of my own journey, which I'll share with you here in just a moment. And so if you have any questions in the realm of autoimmunity, definitely someone that you can talk to. Hey, Lisa. So glad you're here. So let's kind of dive in. What you can expect in today's training, right? I have my notes, so if you see me kind of shifting my eyes, that's what's going on. I want to make sure I get everything in here that I want to include. So we're going to talk about, what is a disease first and foremost, and then we'll kind of fine tune that to what is an autoimmune disease, and actually some of you guys in here have dealt with that, so that's really, really great that you're here. And then we'll talk about the differences between conventional and functional approaches to dealing with an autoimmune disease, meaning what foods to include and maybe what foods to avoid for a certain time period. And then we'll go into, well, I guess it's really the autoimmune protocol. So yeah, we'll just kind of dive in. If at any point you guys have questions, I encourage you just to drop it in the comments. So towards the end of the training, I'll come back and answer those. So Christy, for instance, if you have questions now that drop them and I'll answer them at the end. And so whenever you watch the replay, you'll have those answers, at least to the best of my ability. And if I don't have the answer, of course, I'll help you guys find it. And then if there's anything I say during this training that resonates with you, just let me know, right? Like I want to create content that really speaks to the people that are in front of me. So if you're like, oh man, that really struck me and I would love to know more about that, just let me know. Cool. Okay. Well, great. So I really want to start off by sharing my story. So some of you guys know it and some of you don't, but I really come from that background of growing up with an autoimmune disease. And of course, at the time, I didn't know that that's what that was. So when I was 3, I began having a lot of complications with breathing. And Katie, you might remember me growing up with a breathing machine or an inhaler because she was with me a lot as a kid. But essentially, I was diagnosed with chronic asthma at age 3, and my parents were told that I was incurable. I was essentially destined to experience asthma for the remainder of my life, and that I would be forever dependent upon medication. Now, in some part, that was true because for the 20 years after that, I was heavily dependent upon medication. And I wasn't able to, again, Katie, you might remember this, but I wasn't able to, participate in a lot of the activities, whether it was different sports or gym. I would often have to sit out or go to the nurse's office to do a breathing treatment, or sneak in the bathroom and do my inhaler. As I got older, I was a little bit more embarrassed about those things. But it was something that really kind of controlled my whole life. And it wasn't until 2007 when I started studying nutrition that I began to realize that diet would have an impact on my disease state. So I was never really trying to overcome asthma because for me, I thought it was a permanent part of my life. And so I was just more curious about different diets and just kind of playing around. But something that was really cool is that when I started experimenting with, taking certain things out, I had less severity in my symptoms as well as less frequency. And so that really stood out to me, right? Because there would be days where I would do an inhaler, which is supposed to be rescue, anywhere from like 2 to 20 times a day. And that would be in addition to a breathing treatment. So it was a pretty severe thing. So any lessening of those symptoms was really profound for me, and it really stood out. So that kind of sparked my whole journey of being curious around how nutrition could impact the way I was feeling. But it wasn't really until after I became a dietitian in 2011 that I was introduced to the realm of functional medicine. And through that, I was really able to get more of a handle or more of an understanding of what was actually happening in my body. And I was able to implement more of a very specific approach to nourish my body. But in addition to that, as you'll come to see, is that lifestyle plays a really big role in all of this. And so it was really the coming into yoga and the retraining of my breathing patterns as someone who had asthma that really got me past that edge. And so yeah, now I've been off my medication for about 9 years, and I can do all the things that I never thought I'd be able to do. Like I can run and I can hike and I skydive, I go skiing and snowboarding, and I can pretty much be as active as I want to be, and I don't carry medication around with me at all. So I've completely overcome or put that disease into a state of remission, and I just get to live my life, right? So it's really, really cool. So that's kind of the driving force behind why I focus on people who have autoimmune conditions, because we're often told that we're incurable and that, there's really nothing we can do. Nothing that you can do in your life would ever shift or change the experience you're having. And so I'm here to call that BS and say that's absolutely not true. The body is an ever-changing, ever-evolving, highly intelligent organism. And whenever we give the body what it needs and we would take out the things that might be bothering it, it can start to create balance within itself. So I love you too, Doran. And maybe one day we'll get Doran on here to share her story, and even Lisa, and potentially anybody really. But Doran, you really tie into this with your son. So yeah. So that's my story, and I really share it for 2 reasons, right? One, I've been there. Like, there's no better way for me to guide someone than actually having been in their shoes, right? So I know what it's like to live with an autoimmune condition. And second reason why I want to share that with you is because I want to encourage you to never accept a diagnosis as fate, okay? Never. And actually, you know what? I will put an analogy in here. So imagine you have 2 identical seeds. And Lisa, you may have heard this one. But you have 2 identical seeds, right? And you take those seeds and you put them in 2 different pots, but the same soil, and you're putting them in 2 different environments. So in one environment, they are not getting sunlight, they're not getting watered, and they're just living in a very dark atmosphere. Whereas the other plant is living in an environment where it has sunlight, fresh air, it's getting watered, and it's just generally in a nice positive environment. You are going to have 2 completely different outcomes, right? One plant will wilt and wither and die or never even grow, whereas the other one will essentially thrive. And so your genes are the same way. Whatever environment we create for ourselves and for our genes is going to dictate the experience that we have. And just because something is, withering away right now, it doesn't mean that it can't come back to life. Okay? Really, really important to know that. So do you guys have any questions so far? Everybody's just kind of following along? We're groovy? Okay. I'll keep going. So what is the disease? I'm curious, guys. Whenever I say disease, like, what comes to your mind? If you can go ahead and type that out and let me know what you think here before I go a little bit further, I would love to hear what you think. I'll wait. Anybody? Nobody? Come on, guys. This is a conversation. Nada. Okay, well, I'll just continue on. So if you do want to give me your definition, you can pop it, but otherwise I'll just go. So a disease is something that is very real and very specific to anyone who has that disease or who fears that they might come into that disease. And that's because we understand them by way of what they do to us and how they make us feel. So, for instance, in my body, asthma was causing inflammation of the airways, it was increasing mucus production, and thus I was feeling a tightness in my chest, incessant wheezing, and I would have these prolonged, painful periods of coughing that would leave me feeling like an elephant had been sitting on my chest all night. I'd be very tired and sore. And so that was my experience with it. But the curious thing about diseases that I think, what I think is curious, is that on the outside, asthma looks like a very particular condition based on the symptoms. But here's the thing. Whenever you look at what was going on at the cellular level in my body, it's really no different than any other autoimmune disease. That could be lupus, that could be arthritis, that could be eczema, psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, or even any other chronic disease like diabetes or heart disease, or even like a mood disorder, depression, anxiety, bipolar, etc. The interesting thing about all of these disease states is that at the root, they're really all the same. You have cellular inflammation and you have nutrient deficiency, right? That's really the two biggest drivers. And so it doesn't matter what we're working with. It's as long as we can reduce inflammation and replenish nutrient deficiencies, we're going to have progress, right? So it's kind of the fascinating thing about our medical culture is that we classify and we name diseases based on symptoms and not the actual origin of that. So they're all broken biochemical pathways. And the thing is that the symptoms you experience are based on your genetic vulnerabilities. So root cause, similar, but what you experience is based on your particular vulnerabilities. So we'll dive into that here in a moment when we talk about what is an autoimmune disease, but that's just something really interesting to think about. So wherever you have a weakness, that's where that biochemical brokenness, broken biochemistry is going to show up in that pathway for you. So if it's eczema for one and asthma for the other, multiple sclerosis for this person, right? They're all still very similar. So by definition, it's a state, this is my definition, a disease is a state in which the body is out of balance, right? And within autoimmune disease, it's driven by inflammation, the stress, the deficiencies, the toxins, and inactivity. So it's very much a lifestyle-oriented approach. Let's see. Anxiety, yes, she says. Yeah, so yeah, okay, some of your responses, disease equals illness. Yes, and Christy, I like your distinction, dis-ease. Yeah, that's a really powerful distinction, is that it's dis-ease in the body. It's that imbalance. Something's not right. And the thing about it is like your body will give you symptoms. It's like, hey, something's wrong, something's not right, right? And those symptoms, again, they present in a way that's appropriate to your body. So it's just up to us to listen. Okay, cool. So we're riding along here. So an autoimmune disease, let's think about this. Auto means self, and then, of course, immunity is going to be the immune system of the body. So with an autoimmune condition, the body has essentially misidentified itself as a foreign invader or maybe a foreign pathogen, and it begins to attack. Now, all cells have receptors on the membranes, and those receptors are what allow the immune system to recognize the cell as safe or one of its own. Now, if the cell becomes oxidized or if it binds to lead or mercury or something happens to the structure of that, it will basically become a little like alarm system to the immune system, and the immune system will have to identify whether it's a foreign object but safe, or is it a foreign object and dangerous, right? If it identifies it as dangerous and it's like, hey, we got to get this out of the body, that's when the vigorous attack starts taking place, okay? Now that's what's happening in an autoimmune disease. The body is misidentifying its own proteins or molecules or structures, and it's thinking that it's a foreign object that is dangerous to the body. So we must attack it to get it out. And it's really all just for survival, right? That's really the whole point. So if you have, here I want to say this. So this system, right, the immune system, it works really well when it works. But when the wires get crossed, that's when something is wrong. So if, okay, so here's some examples. Let me just give some examples. If the body is triggered and it begins to attack the myelin sheath, the fatty tissue or in the brain, that's what we would classify as multiple sclerosis. Or if the immune system gets triggered and it begins attacking the skin and you get rashes and blisters, we would identify that as psoriasis or eczema or some other skin condition. If the immune cells start to attack the lungs, creating wheezing or constricted airways, that would be classified as asthma. If the immune system begins attacking the thyroid and we experience things related to either hyper or hypothyroidism, that would be, Hashimoto's or Graves' or just autoimmune thyroiditis. If it attacks the joints and you get swelling or stiffness and pain in the joints, that's what we would call rheumatoid arthritis or systemic lupus. Do you see that the same thing, it's all the same. It's the immune system attacking tissue, but the experience, like whatever disease you get, is based on your vulnerability. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, is that clicking with you, that these are really all essentially the same thing, but they just present differently depending on the body? Yes? No? I'll let you post. Okay. So I don't know if you know this. Actually, I'm kind of curious if you know this. Do you guys know how many autoimmune conditions we've identified in today's medical realm? Okay, great. That makes sense to you. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Just take a guess. Like how many? Oh, Winter, what's up? How many conditions do you think we've identified? Awesome, Lisa. Random guess, just pop it in. And don't Google it, or you can, but better. Okay, I'm gonna wait for you guys to answer that. Let's see here. Okay, I'll give you the answer. There's about 140, which is a lot, right? And it makes my job really interesting and fun. Really interesting and fun. And 500, Christy, that's a lot. I don't think Epstein-Barr is, no, that's just a viral contraction. 5,000, dang, girl, I would be a busy woman. So there's 140 that we've identified that we work with, at least in our medical realm. So, but that's not to say that there's so many we have not identified, correct? Which is really saying something. So keeps me nice, and it keeps my job really entertaining because I get to work with a variety of disease states, and it's always so interesting to hear people's experiences and just knowing that no matter what they're working with, we can tend to find relief, either relief or just full-on remission, just using nutrition and lifestyle protocols. It's super fun. So now we're going to dive into the difference between conventional and functional medicine, and then that'll drive us into, what is the protocol? What do I eat more of? Or what do I want to reduce in my diet to start noticing a difference? So in conventional medicine, right? Let me first and foremost say I have no qualms with conventional medicine. It's why I'm standing right here. It absolutely kept me alive for decades. But it is a Band-Aid, right? So I want to emphasize that it has its place, but it's not the end-all be-all cure, right? It's really disease management, not remission, management. So we're kind of keeping it around, but keeping it at bay. So scientists in the conventional realm are very aware that chronic disease states begin as the result of broken biochemistry or the confused signaling between cells, but they don't know why, right? So their standard of care, which just so happens to be the standard of care for America, turns to drug therapy. And they turn to drug therapy as a means to slow the progression of one of these disease states, right? Now, according to their published research, which likes to just ignore other research, they show that drug therapy is the only way to make any consistent or favorable impact in slowing the progression of an autoimmune disease. So for them, there's nothing else. Like, they don't look at nutrition, they don't look at stress, they don't look at sleep, activity, microbiome health. They're just looking at, here's a collection of symptoms. We have a drug that works with that. Let's pair those up, right? But this is how they work. So those drugs work by weakening your body's innate immune system so that the body will stop or slow down the vigorous attack on whatever tissue it's attacking. So it's really a blunting or blocking of a really important system in your body. And that does come with potential side effects, right? Because if you're stopping a system, then you're going to have, dysfunction down the line. And that's why I like the holistic approach, because we're not blocking any biochemical pathways. We're just changing the environment. And when you change anything, you must get a different outcome, right? That's just law and physics there. So let's see here. And then in addition to that, right, so yes, it's going to block the immune system, right? So it's going to slow down how aggressively the body's attacking itself. But it's also going to make you more vulnerable to contracting other viruses or pathogens, bacteria, et cetera, because your immune system is now suppressed, right? Not ideal, especially living in today's world. We want to have the most robust immune system that we can, right? Really, really, really important. And not just because of COVID, but just generally, like, there are more people than ever, and we also have a more compromised environment than ever. So it's up to us to keep this strong and resilient as much as possible. And also, one thing to note here is that when we down-regulate the immune cells, we're also down-regulating all the other cells in the body. So that's where these side effects come from. You can get fatigue as a side effect of medication. You can get increasingly worse joint pain. You can get achiness or depression, and whatever side effects else come with that. So, that's kind of the gamble that comes with it. And I know for me, when I was taking medication for those 20 years, Katie, if I ever lost it on you, I'm sorry, I don't know. But I was a very unstable, right? I was very unstable. And there would be times where I would just rage at my family. And I was so scared, one, but also I just had this overwhelming desire to crawl out of my skin, and I couldn't be comfortable. I was very irritable, and so I would take it out on people that I love, and in fact they were just there for me, and they loved me, and they didn't deserve any of that. So the medications actually did take a toll on my relationships for a while, and I was seen as aggressive. I was my sister said I needed to go to anger therapy, whatever they call that, anger management. And in reality, it was really just all a byproduct of the medication I was taking, and I wasn't responding well to it. So, and I'd also get rashes and stuff like that. So, let's see here. Oh, I do want to highlight this. So we did just identify that those medications, or just the conventional approach, they don't pay attention to diet or toxin, stress, activity, sleep. But we know, this is really powerful, guys, okay? This is the realm of your power. We know, right, that those combined account for 70 to 95% of your risk of an autoimmune condition. Did you guys get that? That's really big, okay? So your diet, your exposure to toxins, your stress management, so typically if you're in a chronically stressed state, your activity level, and your sleep, all of those combined, they equal 70 to 95% of your risk for an autoimmune disease. That's so big. So if you can start to change any one of those aspects, or over time slowly change all of them, then this is your power, right? You have control and you have impact on the state of your body and the health that you experience. This is so important. So this is me basically right now putting the power of your health and your life back in your hands, okay? So when a doctor says that there's nothing you can do and you're destined, it's your genetics, it's your fate, it runs in your family, crap, okay? That's total crap. It's not true. The body is way more intelligent, far more intelligent than we could ever even fathom. So just to kind of round out this whole point on conventional medicine, drugs will not improve the quality of your diet. Drugs will not reduce your exposure to toxins. In fact, they might increase your exposure. Drugs do not mitigate your chronic stress, and drugs do not increase your activity level. They don't. Only you can do that, okay? So it's a Band-Aid, right? It's a Band-Aid. You guys following along so far? We good? We going strong? Okay. So functional medicine. I love this stuff, right? This is stuff that changed my life. So functional medicine looks more deeply at the reasons why, like why the body has lost its tolerance to understanding self and not self, or identifying that. It seeks to know why and how we have the broken biochemistry. It wants to know, what actual biochemical reactions have gone wrong to get us to where we are, and what are the environmental factors that are triggering or worsening the condition that we're experiencing. So it's really that, what is the root cause? So if we can bypass, the fluffiness of a symptom, and we can start to say, but why, right? So again, that cellular inflammation, the cellular deficiency, toxin exposure, why, okay? And then we have to figure out what is it that applies to your life. So what are your stressors? How do we mitigate and manage that? What are the toxins you are being exposed to that you can start to reduce or remove? What deficiencies do you have, right? So it's really taking that and applying it to your particular life, right? And understanding. And that's a really efficient way. I never had that. I had to experiment for a decade, or I got to experiment. Definitely didn't have to, but I got to. And that was definitely a gift and a blessing for sure. So functional medicine, it believes in the intelligence of the human body to heal, especially when it's provided with its appropriate environment and its nutritional needs, while simultaneously removing anything that causes dysfunction or worsens the condition, okay? So we're going to really go into this autoimmune approach, or the autoimmune protocol, which, by the way, guys, here is something. All this information is available online. It's in books. You can find the autoimmune protocol anywhere. My job really within the realm of nutrition coaching is to help you apply it to your lifestyle and to keep you accountable. So giving you support, firsthand conversation around the topic to help you really pinpoint what in your life could be changed in a way that's realistic and sustainable. And yeah, so education, support, accountability, etc. But if you don't need education, support, and accountability, or I guess I should say, if you don't need support and accountability, the education's online. You got it. So we are going to dive into the actual protocol. So here's what you should know. The autoimmune protocol is an elimination approach, okay? So there is definitely removal taking place, and we're going to talk more about that. But it's a complementary approach to disease management. Like if you're doing conventional medicine, you could apply this along with it with the hopes of eventually getting the body in a balanced state and reducing or completely getting off of medication. Okay, so it can be used as a complement to conventional medicine. Really important. And anytime you are making changes, definitely talk to your doctor, because that will impact, the quantity or dose that you need with any medication you're taking. So always stay in touch. So the whole thing is, it's basically to provide the body with the nutritional resources that your body it requires, right? So all those cells that we talked about, the trillions of cells that you have, they require essential vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, oxygen, etc. They require all of these nutrients in order to do their job. And if at any point they're deficient, or if at any point, well, I guess we can talk about what causes a deficiency, but if at any point they're deficient, then any of their jobs downstream are going to become impacted. So we want to make sure that anytime we're putting food into the body, it's the most nutrient-dense food source possible, okay? Really important. But that only makes a difference if you're reducing inflammation. So if you're not reducing inflammation, but you're just flooding the body with nutrients, good luck absorbing it, right? You have an inflamed GI system that can barely even access those nutrients if it wants to. So there has to be that simultaneous approach of reducing inflammation, aka removing irritants. And we're talking about specifically nutrition here. We're not going to get into the lifestyle, toxins, all that stuff. We're talking specifically nutrients. So if we reduce inflammation, and we bring in those nutrient-dense foods, now we have an opportunity to start replenishing those deficiencies and bringing the body's systems back up to like a normal balanced state. Let's see here. What else do I want to say? My computer froze. Okay. Yes, so it's really balanced, complete nutrition, avoiding processed, refined foods and empty calories. And on the back end, we do pay attention to lifestyle, but right now we're focusing on food. So food, let's talk about it. So there are foods that have, well, let's back up. Food has compounds, and these compounds can be what we call health promoting or health depleting. And those health depleting compounds are essentially compounds that we know can cause inflammation in the body. And there are some that might be quote unquote neutral, but we're not going to pay attention to that. So we're paying attention to the foods that we want to include are foods that are rich in those key nutrients that are health promoting, right? But they don't really have a lot of those potential inflammatory compounds. Now, there are foods that have both, like tomatoes, right? A lot of nutrition, but they also have compounds that prevent absorption of minerals. So in this approach, an autoimmune protocol, you're going to take out anything that has both. And we're really just going to focus on the foods that have the most nutrient density, right? Later on, you can bring these back in, the ones that have maybe some potential inflammatories, but also nutrients, like dense nutrients. Those can come back in eventually, but during the beginning phases where you're just healing, you take those out. If that does not make sense, drop a comment so I can kind of clarify, or a question. Okay, yeah, let's keep going. I think I've already said that. Oh, this is pretty cool. So I did pull out a research study. This was a study done in 2017, and they had 15 patients who had active flares with IBD, which is inflammatory bowel disease. And so they took these participants and they put them on the autoimmune protocol. It was a 6-week period followed by a 5-week maintenance. And within that, 73% had full remission. Pretty cool. So they reached full remission within the 6-week period, and then they maintained it through the 5-week maintenance. So that's pretty profound. And I did have other research. I guess I didn't put it into this document, but there's plenty where that came from. So if you want more on that end of the thing or spectrum, you can just message me and I'll totally send you more research. So this is where it gets really fun. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of the actual food. So I'm going to take a moment to pause for about, I don't know, a minute or so and let you guys drop any comments. Like, is there anything that stood out to you or that you're resonating with, or maybe you're like, aha, or whatever, or questions? Just go ahead and post those right there so I can see where you guys are at and how you're following along. I'll drink some beverage. I think there's delay in the response here too. Come on. It's a conversation. Come on, guys. Doran, I know you can pop in here and say some stuff. So Doran's son has definitely dealt with a lot of, I would say psoriasis and eczema. I think this is mainly eczema, Doran? But we got his skin completely cleared up, nearly completely cleared up, and he does have some conventional support now, but he's come so far. Okay, so, yes, okay. Yeah, okay, so right here, I did the autoimmune protocol for 3 years, and 3 years ago for 90 days, and it changed your life. That's incredible. So my question there would be, what, like, why'd you stop, or was it not sustainable? Did you go in too quickly and not gradually enough for it to actually become your lifestyle? I have a lot of questions around that, but I'm super happy to hear that you tried it and that you actually got benefit from it, like proof, right? And I'll say I might tweak the actual protocol a little bit. I always like to adjust things, but okay, guys, I'm going to continue on so you guys don't have to all hang out here for any crazy amount of time. So we're going to talk first about the foods that we can take out, and then we'll talk about the foods that we can have an abundance of, so we can end on like positive note of like, oh, great, I can have all these things. So when it comes to foods that could potentially irritate the body, especially in the realm of autoimmunity, we're going to look at grains, and not just gluten-containing grains, but all grains. They have things called, like basically that are called phytates or phytic acid and oxalates, and those can really irritate the GI lining while simultaneously preventing the body from absorbing nutrients from the food, so it can actually perpetuate deficiencies. We don't want that. Same thing with legumes, the phytic acid and oxalates, you want to take that out. So you're really looking at a grain-free or like legume-free diet right off the bat, okay? Dairy, anything that's cow dairy based would be removed as well. And in particular, whenever you if you do take that out and if you bring it back in, you want to make sure you have grass-fed, and we'll talk about quality actually, so I'll kind of hold off on that. Other things, refined and processed sugars and oils. This is actually probably the biggest thing you can do is the refined oils I find to be the #1 irritant to the body, because it's basically like, say this is a jug of canola oil, which it's not, but if it was, this is an entire, like, it's made up entirely of omega-6 fats. And omega-6 fats promote inflammation in the body. They're an irritant. We need them, but if you're in an autoimmune state, it's highly likely that your ratio of omega-6s is just way too high and it's imbalanced with the 3s. So any of those refined oils, canola, safflower, sunflower, vegetable oil, Dorn, you probably have these memorized now, soybean oil, corn oil, etc. You can look up highly refined seed oils. All of those you want to get out of your diet, absolutely. And the place where they're going to come in the most is either going to be packaged processed foods or when you're eating out, because it's a really inexpensive oil for restaurants to use. And so it just makes sense for them. It's the most economically viable option. So, and then refined sugar. So instead of using white refined sugar, if you want a sweetener, you would use things like honey or molasses or maple syrup. Eggs. This one, it's the egg whites really that can irritate people. Some people do really well, some people don't, but it is one of the most common irritants that I see. So as much as I love eggs and see their nutritional value, like this is one of those things, right? Eggs have immense nutritional value with choline for neurological support for anxiety and depression and all this stuff, but they also have some really, they can be potentially inflammatory. So remember, those ones are coming out right away, but it could eventually be brought back in. This would also include nuts and seeds, okay? And coffee, so coffee would be included in here as well as cacao. So I know if you love chocolate and coffee, this might be a little bit difficult, but we can work through it. And those really have to do with, again, they have mineral inhibitors inside of them, essentially in the outside of it, but they prevent the body from absorbing minerals, again, perpetuating deficiency, and they can be really irritating. Like they need to go through a germination process, if anything, for the body to be able to absorb it. Other things that would be removed in the autoimmune protocol would be nightshades. That would be potatoes. Sweet potatoes are okay, but this would be white potatoes. Tomatoes, eggplants, sweet and hot peppers, cayenne, red pepper, tomatillos, and even I think goji berries would fall on there. Let's see here. Alcohol would also be one that you would take out for some time. NSAIDs like aspirin or ibuprofen. Not really nutritional there, but I'll punch it in. And then I also have in here any non-nutritive sweetener. So non-nutritive sweeteners can be incredibly irritating to the body, actually, but that's going to be your monk fruit, your stevia, your Splenda, all those things, right? So again, we want to rely on those natural sweeteners like honey, maple syrup, molasses, things like that, okay? And then also things that can be really irritating would be food additives or emulsifiers or thickeners. So certain types of lecithin or what's the major one that they've been taking out? Anyways, it's what they used to essentially use in nut milks a lot, and they've been taking it out. But anything that has ingredients that you can't really imagine growing on a tree, you want to just kind of, or being a land animal, you want to kind of avoid those. And that would be your like food colorings, preservatives, nitrites, nitrates, things like that. Okay. Good question, Christy. That's a really good question. I will look into that. She's asking about carob. It's different than cacao, so I will look into that and I'll get back to you. Really good question. Okay, so that's kind of the things to take out, right? So it sounds like a lot. You're like, oh shoot, what am I gonna eat? But here we go. This is like nutrient density to the rescue. So the top, Lisa, forgive me, but the top food that I would recommend, and this is not just my tweak on the autoimmune, it's the actual autoimmune protocol, but it would be organ meats. So organ meats are what I consider to be the only superfood on the planet. They have the most nutrient density, and they also have the most active bioavailable nutrients to the human body. So if you have an inability, like meaning you have a genetic SNP, we call it, but a genetic mutation, where your body can't quite activate B12, or it can't activate folate, or something like that, then this kind of bypasses that whole process, and it says, hey, it doesn't matter if you can't activate B12 or folate from the forms found in plants. We already activated it, so here you go. It's ready to go. Go for it. So organ meats really are a superfood, and this would include things like heart, liver, kidneys, spleen, intestines if you wanted to. There's thymus, thyroid, etc. I really like to eat organs. I like to put it into a pate form or like saute them up. Like if I'm doing liver, I'll saute that up. Or I also get this blend. It's bison with liver, heart, and kidney already blended into it. So you can make burgers, meatballs, anything like that, and you're still getting it, but you're not so aware you're eating the organs. Um, yeah, and they also have really, really nice supplements available that are just desiccated organs. So that would be the number one thing. It's going to have the most nutrient density, and because it's not a plant, it doesn't have any of those potential side effect causing compounds like lectins or oxalates or phytic acid or goitrins, things like that. What do you guys think? Are you into the organs? Oh, I'm going to read this here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Super effective. Focus on what you can eat, not what you can't. Oh, precisely. Yeah, totally. So we are all about the abundance mindset here, where it's like, yeah, sure, these things we can't have, but like, okay, they're gone. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. So now let's look at what we can have and get really excited and see what can we do with that in the realm of being in our kitchen, right? So it's very much an abundance-oriented mindset. Like, we're super fortunate to have access to all of these things, and so we just need to be like, stand in that or kind of embody that state of appreciation and like, yeah, okay, this is an abundance. Like, we can have an abundance of these things. So after that would be things like seafood, so wild caught fish or even shellfish. The organs, I would say about 5 times a week if you can. If not, that's where you can bring in the supplements. Your seafood, either scallops, shellfish, salmon, tuna, those you want to make sure are definitely wild caught. Sardines, yellowtail, mackerel, etc. I would say anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week. And then we'll go into the vegetables. So leafy green vegetables. So anything that you can imagine that's leafy and green, and this includes the beet greens that are on the stem of your beets. This includes the if you have radish leaves or like even the carrot tops, I like to cut those up and put them in an omelet. But if you're not doing eggs, you can just put it on top of a soup or something like that. Colorful vegetables and fruits. So really think vibrancy, butternut squash, pomegranates, berries, anything that's really vibrant and catches your eye, that would be in that category, okay? And we're really going to go for about 3 cups a day on each of those, but don't really worry about that too much. So just know that you're trying to get in those leafy greens, you're trying to get in those colorful vegetables and fruit, as well as your roots, tubers, and winter squash. So parsnips, sweet potatoes, purple potatoes, beets, fennel, carrots, turnips, rutabaga, acorn squash, spaghetti squash, right? All those things would be fair game. And things like your alliums, so onions, leek, garlics, right? Those would kind of come in. And then your sea vegetables. So people say, well, how do you eat a sea vegetable? I really like to use kombu, which, it's kind of thick and they're really dried out. But if I'm making soup or bone broth, you just stick it in the liquid and that will seep out into the liquid and you can get the minerals that way. And then mushrooms and other edible fungus, I would say be sure to cook those. And you'll notice, so I do want to kind of highlight something here. Yeah, winter, I will repeat that in just a second for sure. So there is a category of vegetables called cruciferous vegetables, and personally speaking, I would say they're my favorite. However, when it comes to autoimmunity, especially, okay, if you have anything going on with autoimmune thyroiditis, Hashimoto's, Graves, etc., you want to actually, during the healing phase, I would encourage removing the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, kale, turnips, cauliflower, arugula, Brussels sprouts, all those really bitter vegetables. And again, it's one of those things where it can be highly nourishing, but also has these potential inflammatory effects. And so the particular thing about this class of vegetables is that they have a compound called goitrogens in there, and those can actually inhibit the body from getting selenium and iodine, which the thyroid really needs, and you tend to see deficient with autoimmune thyroiditis. So if you are experiencing that, I would say, kind of remove those vegetables for some time. Otherwise, they're totally fair game. Try cooking them if you can. Let's see here. I'm going to pause for a second on that and answer this question. So yeah, winter, the 75 to 90%. So your diet, your stress management, your activity, your sleep, and those are the 4 I named. So sleep. Yeah. Yeah, basically all your lifestyle factors are what basically make you susceptible or resilient towards disease. So if your sleeping is out of whack and you have chronically high stress and you're eating food-like products, like not real food, right? And you have all these factors kind of out of balance, then your risk of having an autoimmune response is greater by 70 to 95%. But on the flip side, if you start to kind of get each of those aspects of your life back into balance, then you reduce that risk by 70 to 95%. Does that make sense? And here, Lindsay says she loves organ meat because it's so good for you. Yeah, it is definitely mind over matter, and that's why I like to take it and blend it into the bison or just buy it like that already. So that way it's just there and you don't really need to, do the mind over matter. It's just like, it's like a burger, right? It's just like no big deal. Yeah. Yeah, supplements are great. You can totally reach out. I have some great ones I'd recommend. It sounds scary. You're funny. Let's see here. I think there's one more from Katie. So she says, I recently had a friend who said her doctor told her about a dairy farmer near a Skittles factory. The Skittles factory had a bad batch and delivered the bad batch to the dairy farm. Cows ate it. Basically, if you don't buy grass-fed, you're exposing yourself to things you don't even know. 100%, right? Like, that's crazy because now they have food coloring. And what else comes in a Skittle? I don't even know. High fructose corn syrup. But yeah, that's so big. So we will definitely talk about quality. And that's a crazy story because I didn't know a cow would eat Skittles. Bananas. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. So other things that you can have, right? Like still in that abundance-oriented mindset. Quality meat. So here's where we get into that, the quality component. So animal proteins, again, my dog is just staring at me. It's a birthday. So anything that's like land animal, so duck, pheasant, turkey, chicken, those two tend to be the most compromised, but beef, bison, elk, venison, etc. If you are going to consume those, which I do highly encourage it, if that's part of your, your philosophy, but definitely the autoimmune approach, they have a lot of compounds that can actually help with replenishing and healing the body. So you just want to make sure if it is like grass-fed, grass-finished, that's a new terminology you'll start to see. That means that the animals were not only eating grass and insects and roaming in sunlight and fresh air for part of their life. Grass-finished means they did that their entire life. So that's a big difference. Like to Katie's point, if you don't know what the cow is eating, if it's not labeled grass-finished, then that cow is likely eating grains, corn, soy, and Skittles. And what happens is that those foods will increase the ratio of omega-6s inside that animal protein, making it highly inflammatory to the body, which is not what we're after. But if that cow is eating grass and insects and it's roaming in fresh air and sunlight and it's not living a high-stress lifestyle, that cow is going to have significantly, I think 4 to 6 times more omega-3s, which are cooling to the body, right? They're anti-inflammatory. So quality really matters from the how it's going to benefit the body or impact the body, but also just like humanity, supporting farms that are really taking care of their animals and they're promoting regenerative agriculture. And we want to, eat animals that are being respected. Like that's really important. Energy transfer is real, okay? Healthy fats. So these can be things like fatty fish, right? But also olives and olive oil, avocados and avocado oil. I love the saturated fats from animals, so grass-fed tallow, pastured lard, coconut oil. It's not animal-derived, but it's a saturated fat. What else? Ghee, butter, again, grass-fed ghee and butter. These are all really great, especially if you are dealing with MS, right? That's a really nice fat for you. Let's see here. Fruits. Probiotic fermented foods, so things like, I'm actually not a big fan of kombucha, I'll be real with you guys. I just don't know if I want to flood my body with bacteria that's been cultivating on sugar. But anyways, so I would say kombucha in small amounts is okay, but more like fermented vegetables, or even fermented fruit, but sauerkraut, kimchi, maybe like beet kvass or coconut milk kefir, things like that. If you don't want to eat anything that's fermented, this is where a probiotic would come in. Again, I have recommendations for anything that you might want. And then glycine-rich foods. So, and really proline, glycine, um, uh, glucosamine, glutamine, etc. All of these proteins, especially glutamine, actually have a plethora of receptor sites on the GI. And so what we want to do with that is to really replenish the lining of the GI, because that's one of the main factors in autoimmune is that you have dysfunction occurring there. And so having things like bone broth is really the best, right? So anything with connective tissue, joint, skin, organ meat, that's really going to bring in those amino acids that help to really repair the lining of the GI. So bone broth, if you can, I would say, anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week is really, really great. If you're not going to do bone broth, you could lean into collagen supplementation, but you're really going to get the most bang for your buck and get the most nutritional value if you're doing bone broth. Okay. And then again, as much as possible, if you can find, this is kind of like last major point, but if you can find local farms who are regenerative or who at least promote organic farming, but ideally they're replenishing their soil with nutrients, so your food's going to be the most nutrient dense that it can be, that's ideal. If that's not available, then getting organic from the grocery store. If that's not available, then get your produce and make sure you're washing it. But as much as possible, you want to avoid the pesticides and the herbicides that are coming on these plants, okay? Do I have a great bone broth to share about? Okay. Let me make sure I have anything else on my notes, and I'll come back and do Q&A if there's anything here. No, we can do Q&A. Yeah, okay. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and drop them, and I'll kind of tie it up after that. But great bone broth to share about. Yeah, so Christy, if you're talking about wanting to buy bone broth versus making it, I assume? Probably. So yeah, okay, so there's one called Bare Bones, Barebones. There would be one, Bonafide is another one, Kettle and Fire would be another one, and then there's Epic. I would say of those, the Epic for me tends to be really, really vinegary. And so I tend to just avoid that one. But if I am buying it, I like to just put it on the stovetop, no matter what brand I'm buying, and just kind of like, add some spices to it and fix it up and make it taste delicious. And sometimes oftentimes I'll even add the bone broth to, I have a frother, like a milk frother, but I'll put the bone broth, like a teaspoon of coconut oil, teaspoon of ghee, some salt, pretty liberal on the Redmond Salt, and then I just blend that up, and it's like a nice frothy bone broth latte. It's really good. Yeah, Christy. So I do when it's cold out, I'll make it regularly, and what I do is something called Perpetual Broth. So I'll essentially put in bones, add the water, add just a splash, like a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and then if there's any, like if I want to add onions, garlic, any green stems or anything in there, I'll add it, and then I just cook it down for about 24 hours. At that point, I can start pulling cups out, right? But as I'm drinking, I'm adding more water, and then maybe 3 days in, I'll add in more bones. So I do this for about 5 to 7 days, and I just call it Perpetual Broth. So my slow cooker just stays on the whole time, and I'm just taking broth out, I'm adding water and adding more bones. Redmond Salt, for sure. So I recommend that one in particular because it's one of the only salts, if not the only salt, that was tested and did not have any sign of microplastic from the oceans that comes from caves. So that's a really nice salt. It's at most grocery stores. Let's see here. Cool, make sure I didn't miss any up here. The carob question, gotta get that one. Oh, even if the legumes are soaked and pressure cooked. Really good question. So the soaking, okay, this is important. Okay, so soaking is meant to be like a germination process to a legume or a nut or a seed, something like a grain, right? So these things that have oxalates and phytic acid or lectins, et cetera, you can actually soak them, and you can tend to deactivate some of those. But yeah, Christy, I would say the soaking would be really essential no matter what, but during the autoimmune protocol, I would just take them out altogether. But yeah, and then whenever you do bring them back in, or if anyone here does eat them on a regular basis, for sure, like soak, sprout, whatever, any nuts, seeds, grains, legumes, beans, that's going to be the most like the most nutrition bioavailability for you. And that's because that plant thinks that it's about to sprout and grow life. And so it's like, oh, here's all my nutrients. It's available to you, you know? Let's see. Did I miss any other questions? Christy, you're supposed to be at the park. Cow bones. What do you mean cow bones? Cow bones. Like for cooking bone broth? That's great. Yeah. I use all sorts of stuff. So I really like to use chicken feet. Chicken feet have they have a lot of collagen in there. So I noticed when I cook down chicken feet, that's like the most, like the richest bone broth I can get. And also my dog loves to eat chicken feet, so I just keep a ton on hand. But yeah, any sort of meaty bone would be awesome, or like a carcass of something. But if you are doing okay, I tried to do venison one time, so deer bones, and apparently you're supposed to roast them first, or else they're really gamey. I didn't know that. I had a really awful experience. So yeah, that would be great, Christy. You can actually just hit up like a local farm, and they tend to have like bags of bones. And you're up there in the Pacific Northwest, so it should be fine. But yeah, any bones, duck bones, chicken, turkey. I mean, you could probably even do, there's cow bones. You could do really anything, bison, elk, anything like that. But they're really gamey. Like if it's wild game, research that. I think you need to roast them before you cook them. There's some process in there. Any other questions? This is fun. We'll give it just a few more minutes, and I'll try and have us off here around like 7 or a few minutes after, in case you guys have dinner plans. Does Shasta eat the chicken feet raw? Yes, she does, and she loves it. So yeah, I just give her a whole chicken foot. They're all frozen, and she just gnaws on that. They're great for road trips, for snacks. She also loves raw sardines, so I have this huge bag of raw sardines, and I just kind of like toss them out to her as a treat. Yeah, her diet is stellar. It far surpasses my own diet. So let's see. Christy, I'm loving the questions, girl. I'm so glad you're still here. Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions based on the stuff we talked about? So we talked about, kind of the perspective of what a disease is. Your dogs like chicken feet too. Dope. About what a disease is, what autoimmune disease is, like the conventional functional approach to it, and then we went more into just like the protocol around it. Now, do keep in mind, I want to add in here, gut health is a massive component of this. We're not diving into that here. We're just talking about nutrition. So we can do another training on the ins and outs of gut health, because I would love to talk about that with you guys. But right now, it's just quite literally, here's the autoimmune protocol. And we'll kind of do more advanced trainings in the future. Oh, cool, you're at the park. Awesome. Okay, guys, any more questions? Katie, I'll have to bring your dog a snack pack. Let's see, dogs, you have 2. Cool, glad you're feeling inspired. Super fun. Okay, guys, any more questions? Or else we can wrap it up if we want to. Okay, here we go. Awesome. So so I'm guessing Ashley, my sister Ashley, which is really cool. So Lindsay's in here, and she says, she's been on the paleo form of AIP for the last 10 years, has Hashimoto's, and I'm guessing you found it to be supportive for you and helpful. But yeah, I work a lot with the Hashimoto's, and I'm really excited that you're able to find this 10 years ago. Because I did not, 10 years ago, I was just experimenting, right? Didn't even know this was a thing. So that's really cool. And I'm really glad you're here and you're kind of chiming in. It's super, super great to have someone who's kind of in the process and who's maybe had remission in their own body and kind of speak to what's going on here. So thank you so much for being here. So yeah, guys, I really just want to kind of tie this all together and say, actually not really tie you together, I just want to say something. But the food recommendations that I just gave you based on the autoimmune protocol are generic. Okay, if you're currently in a state where you're trying to figure things out, or if you are like just in the middle of a flare and you're like, God, I thought I had under control, but I guess I don't, right? This is where I would say, dive into more advanced approaches where You're looking at your actual food sensitivities and your nutritional deficiencies. We're looking to see, you know, what foods are you consuming that are causing inflammation for you. So this can be things like salmon. This can be things like broccoli. This can be things like coconut, right? It could be a spice. So if you're in the middle of a flare, if you really just don't know what is going on, you don't know left from right, up from down, and you're just kind of suffering, using testing like that can be really advantageous because you're basically getting a cheat code from your body, and your body's like, hey, here's what's up. Here's the things that are bothering us, and here's the things that, you know, are working really well for us. And then also, here's what we're deficient in, so let's go ahead and eat more of these other foods, right? It's really nice if you just don't really know what to do or where to go, or if you've just been struggling for a long time. But it's also great if you just want to have a preventative approach, right? Like I run these tests on myself every single year just to prevent going back into that state of asthma. So these food recommendations are generic. And again, they're also a complement to things like sleep, activity, stress management, etc. So it's just one piece of the puzzle, okay? You got to do all the things to get that long-lasting relief that you're really wanting, okay? So from there, I'll say that's kind of a wrap on today's training on nutrition and autoimmunity. If anything resonated with you or stood out to you, you can always send me a DM. I'd love to have more conversations with you. But if you feel like you need more support, if you're just like, this all makes sense and I think it's great, but I need help, I need support, I need accountability, I need someone to help me kind of zoom into my life and see my blind spots, definitely send me a message and let me know, and I would be happy to share more information with you on my one-on-one nutrition coaching. I would love to help anyone who needs it. Let's see here. Dutch hormone testing is wonderful. Actually, that's kind of the wrap. Okay, so if you want to bounce off, you can, but I'm going to now address the question about the testing. Yes, Lindsay, I do love the Dutch hormone testing. I also run really advanced thyroid panels, cardiometabolic panels, inflammatory panels. There's a lot that we can look at. And the nutritional testing, I did use SpectraCell for about 9 years, but I recently switched to a different company called Vibrant. Same technology. However, they're also, like with SpectraCell, you're getting that intracellular status of nutrients. But with Vibrant, you get intra and extracellular, and you get more distinction between serum, white blood cell, red blood cell. So a little bit more data, but the same technology. So it's really awesome. You should look into that one. But yeah, those are great panels. And yeah, Katie's doing testing. Katie signed up. She's on board, and I think we ordered like 6 panels for you yesterday, I think is what we did. So she went for the advanced, the more like advanced package of just getting everything. So really excited to work with you, girl. And yeah, everyone who came, I love you guys, and I appreciate you for hanging out with me on a Thursday night for so long. If you need me, you know where to find me. I hope you are all having a great day, and I'll leave you there. See you later. Yeah, good to know. All right, guys, have a good one.